Alright guys, welcome back. All of a sudden, those beasts have gathered around the church. Failed, failed, failed.
なんだこいつら全然やる気がない
The beasts aren't moving an inch. Their glittering eyes are transfixed not on me, but on the servant. Delighted by the failure of another, distorted by the perverted glee. Yes, yes, again. Failed again.
ちきしょうマスターを失ったからな俺も奴らの仲間入りかよ
Spoken like a condemned criminal, terrified of the ultimate punishment. Ah, I don't want this, he says. The servant genuinely begs me to help, then, with a tearing sound, he transforms into a hideous monster. Yes, yes, yes.
お前は一体
He's the same. The servant Avenger's entire body is melting, morphing into the shape of one of those beasts.
こうして俺は失敗するよく見ておけエミヤシロこれが正体だ俺は無限に失敗する俺は無限に死に続ける
Reminds me of Guts' Dark Shadow armor from Berserk. A little bit.
この俺がいる限り聖杯戦争が終わることはない
You too, you too, you too. His body is shivering. The thing that used to be Avenger, despite being terrified by the surrounding beasts and bleeding profusely all over its body, holds onto its sanity and continues to cry out.
いいか天の杯に至れ虚無を埋めろやめろ聖杯を満たせやめろやめろ可能性を皆殺しにしろやめろやめろやめろ見えない見えないもう何も見えないそうだ本物の俺を殺しに来やめてやめて来ないでよ殺しに来たら殺してやる
The black shadow is being devoured by the beasts. The ceremony did not take much time. The beasts are disappearing one by one, and then finally in its place. Lacking all signs of intelligence, a new hideous creature is crouching in front of me. Our eyes meet. The creature tilts its head curiously, and then hops into the bushes like a frog. I'm the only one left in the square. Bazett's body has disappeared without a trace as well. Returned to the first day, probably.
天の杯
The words are familiar. Heaven's Cup. In the Holy Grail War 6 months ago, there was a little girl that went by that name. That should be the last piece of this puzzle. On that day, awaiting its end with the break of dawn. In the winter castle where the little girl awaits, the last path would be revealed. Learn the truth behind the ruins. At the winter castle, the Holy Grail awaits. Learn the truth. Back to another restart. That was interesting. There is a hole in my chest. Something warm is spilling out of the wound, and something cold invades me in its place. A dreadful yet calming feeling. This is death. I feel a little pain, and a little comfort in this peaceful darkness. It was 8 days before the beginning of the 5th Holy Grail War. I arrived in the city of Fuyuki and began preparing for the battle. After learning the topography of the location, I decided on the hiding place that would become my base. With everything perfectly prepared, I summoned the servant. Unlike all the work I've done until now, this process made my heart swing. It was not the joy and anticipation of fighting. Two things happened that made me happy for the first time. About my duties. You told me to cross the ocean. You said to travel around the wide world. Uncertain of myself, I asked in trepidation if he was in any way dissatisfied with having to form a contract with me. To which the servant I summoned replied,
昔一度だけ女戦士と肩を並べて戦ったことがあってな。あんたにはあの女の面影がある。
His laughter felt so good it made my unease feel ridiculous. It's not that I was betrayed. It's just that they had unshakable hearts from the very beginning. I was all show and never decided on the self that every person must have by the time they reach adulthood. I never had any confidence. Focusing entirely on forging the armor of my autonomous self, I was never able to forge my living self. My inner self, weak and cowardly, I have been disappointed by the world ever since the moment I was born. You go through each day as if it was work, my father used to say. That's because I had given up. I was unable to hope, and by having no hope, I let every day pass me by. But that's because I was scared of everything. In truth, I wanted to be rewarded more than anyone else, and yet I continued deceiving myself, pretending to be wise. In truth, I could have enjoyed those days like an ordinary person would, and yet I continued averting my eyes because I would lose it all one day. In truth, being like this is so easy. I want to overcome this weakness so much that I've accepted, that I can't bear, that I'll live out my life, to live my life. Feeling this miserable, feeling so miserable. To be honest, I didn't want to die. So her original servant was Lancer. And then I fall down to this place, the hell I kept on tasting with every repetition. The bottom of the pot made solely from the resentment and hatred of the dead for all living beings. Being here is painful. It cannot possibly be compared with the previous sense of peace. Having suffered through death already, I feel like I'll lose my mind having to suffer here afterwards. It lasts for but a few minutes before arrival, yet this feeling still makes me nauseous every time. The first time I experienced it, I called it hell.
あれが地獄と呼ばれる地点なのかわからない。ただおぞましく汚らしかった。意識のある者にはあれは最低の土窟です。
But that's not right. This is not hell. This is not the place the dead fall down to. My hell and my rebirth was the peace I felt a while ago. That's why this is... I had realized it long ago, his...
そうなんだ。参ったな。俺は特別感じないけど、気がついたらここにいるって感じで。
This is where he came from. The way the thing called Angramanyu was before putting on its disguise. It is the place where he remained before forming a contract with me. And this is where he will return once our contract ends, this false world. Yet there is no pain in it for him. A place that is nothing but suffering to a human like me does not bother him in the slightest. This memory is his everyday life. Prison, plunder, abuse, contempt, an eternal void. And at the end of the suffering, having affirmed the ugly side of humanity, a selfless trance. No happiness, no sadness, not to mention suffering. Nothing exists there. It is the Pure Land. This was the life of certain youth, said to be the epitome of all evil in the world. But all that blank space is already starting to get filled. Once the picture is finished, he will simply return to that place. No matter how artificial it may be, this Holy Grail War is his ideal world. I don't trust the likes of him anymore. But I wonder why he's trying to make this wish end. I wake up from my slumber. It was the most vivid death I had until now, yet I also feel calmer than ever before. No, maybe they're just frozen solid. Both my reason and emotion, the way I am now, I can do anything, no doubt.
よう、起きたかマスター。落ち着いているようで何よりだ。
Same as always, I can see Avenger's figure in the corner of the room, occupied with a puzzle. It's getting on my nerves. He's supposed to be my familiar, yet he does nothing the way I want him to. If you're originally a formless shadow, how about I lock you up in an insect cage?
お、まだやる気満々みたいだな。打たれ強いね、実際。元サーバントに殺されたっていうのに、全然答えてないみたいだ。
Wicked laughter. A flame lights up again in my chilled mind. What I can't let slide isn't his loose manners. It's this air of a villain that he assumes.
なぜですか、アンリ・マユ。この聖杯戦争は私だけの望みではない。いえ、今では私以上に望む者がいるはずだ。私にはわからない。私たちの望みは同じなのに、どうして終わらせようとするのです。
I shout with clenched fists. More than why I had been betrayed, I want to know how he feels. And yet...
飽きた。つまんね
え。He utters right away. Up until now, I have done nothing short of a stellar job of hiding my own emotions.
アベンジャー。
そう睨むなよ。ほら、あんたもいい加減満足しただろ。念願の聖杯戦争を楽しんで大抵の顛末を味わった。けどさ、ここにはあんたに必要だったものは何一つなかった。まあ、なんだ。俺から切り出すのは使い魔としてルール違反なんだが、そろそろいいだろう。契約を破棄しようぜ、マスター。それでこの話はおしまいだ。
Knowing full well what it means, Avenger holds out his hand. I cannot do this. I've crossed paths with many up until this point, but once I've taken another's hand, I can never let go.
アベンジャー、あなた、まだ私が見えている。
Avenger's body wavers ever so slightly. As I thought, he has all but returned to the void already.
言っておきますが、私はこの聖杯戦争を止めるつもりはありません。元の死体に戻るなど真っ平だ。
そうか。マスターがそう言うなら契約は続けるしかない。しかし、こうなると聖杯戦争の本当の勝者にまた聖杯を壊してもらうしかないか。
そんなことできるわけが。
できるよ。あいつは一度やってるからな。言っただろう。これは第5回目の再現なんだって。聖杯を壊したやつが聖杯までたどり着いたら、そりゃ壊れても不思議はないさ。
そう。それが。
Avenger's last trump card. No, it's the final act before the curtains fall, planned from the very beginning.
アベンジャー。
ん？
I pinned the black shadow to the wall.
もっと早くからこうすればよかった。あなたは私のサーバントなのに言うことを聞かなすぎた。
I leave no room for a counterattack. I'll use a command spell right now and there's no cage around to confine him in. Ah, in that case.
お前なんて 私の左腕にでもなってしまえ。
With this, he can no longer go out and meet the winner of the Holy Grail War on his own. I don't want to die. I don't want to kill him either. Therefore, from here on, I will protect the Holy Grail.
Andy, この世界を止めるというなら、あなたであろうと、私の敵だ。
Come, let us continue the Holy Grail War. The Holy Grail is mine. This wish is mine. I won't let anyone destroy them. And we're back to cheery days. Yay! Oh, we're going for a fourth time. There's nothing to do at the church. And Miyashiro should have no more unfinished business over there.
まあ、今さら寄り道の一つや二つ変わらないか。
I'll just waste some time. Everything just piled on one after another so quickly. Both my mind and body are fatigued. It might be a poor motive, but I'll have that woman impart me with some of her vitality again. The music abruptly stops. Karen vacantly stares at me as if she had seen a ghost.
なんで中断するかな。今までやめたことなんて一度もなかったのに。
Returning her stare, I take my usual seat. Having come all this way, even this pew is comfortable.
おい、続きどうした？いつもみたいに構わずやってくれ。終わるまで待ってるから。
I throw out a few jeers.
いえ、話があるのでしたらすぐそちらに伺います。
That's rare. You're telling me this antisocial woman actually had the capacity to be considerate this whole time? Though, I would have liked her to have shown it on the first or second visit. Right now, having my needs attended to just bothers me. Someday, I'm gonna teach her how to read the mood, if I ever get the opportunity.
エネルギー不足なんでムカムカしたいんだ。気にせず日課を続けてくれ。
演奏は続けますが、それはどういう意味でしょうか？
Oops. It didn't seem like that she liked the expression, get worked up.
元気が出るってことなんだが。あんたのオルガンはちょうどいい充電になる。聞いてると頭がビリビリするからな。
Unsatisfied, Karen turns back to the organ. Apparently, she can't understand how getting worked up and shocks are related. In any case, the performance resumed. Life is breathed into the non-existent organ once again. Her thin fingers, covered in wounds, touch the keyboard. For the fourth time, the grating melody reverberates in the chapel. Surprisingly, it feels like it's different than before. Perhaps because the performer's fingers were filled with passion. The waves of sound that were only vaguely irritating before now clearly stimulate my nerves. Just like that. I clearly feel my irritation turn to anger, and finally, the rationality I decorate myself with dissolves. Is there nothing you can find beautiful? That woman said something like that. My feelings like that had long since gone away. I feel at ease now. All I need to do is see things for what they are. Having personal sentiments is a burden in many ways. And yet, why? Stop screwing around. A glimpse of a strange landscape flashes before my eyes. I don't understand its significance. Just a desolate wasteland, a summit far above the ground where the air is thin. But why do I recall that now? An irrelevant thought that would not have faded even if cast away. It's not just a feeling of hatred that remains, but this scenery that had burned into my eyes as well. Stop screwing around. Why am I remembering this kind of place? There shouldn't be anything. There shouldn't be anything there. Nothing. I can't let my heart waver. It's too late now. I can't allow myself to embrace something like sentimental thoughts. It's not like the past would change just because I remembered it. I mustn't turn it into something beautiful out of some mistaken sentiment, some mistaken fantasy. I affirm things the way they are. I mustn't think that things which aren't mine belong to me, just because of nostalgia. Your pride is having nothing. Your meaning is in being nothing. When you fabricate something that doesn't even exist, you become no different from a meaningless sacrifice. Ah, even so, it's still true. It's true that nothing existed here. But hadn't I wished for there to be meaning in that? Her performance is over before I know it. As far as my goal of regaining some vitality goes, I can't help but say it was a letdown. And then I realized Karen is standing in front of me. Now that I think about it, does she want something from me?
あなたがここに来ることはもうないと思っていました。
同感。なんでかな。きっと気の迷いだったんだ。元気が出ると思ったのに脱力させられたし。
自分で続けろと言ったのに。私の演奏はお気に召しませんか？
そうだな。技術レベルじゃ文句はないぜ。その包帯だらけの体でよく体力が続くもんだ。正直感心する。
人語に落ちぬ自負はあります。自身の取り柄を鍛えるのは私の趣味です。
珍しく強気じゃんか。そうか。あんたうまかったのか。
I've done something rude. What would she do if I said I'd been appreciating it with the mindset as watching a school play?
理解していただけて幸いです。ついでに私の演奏のどこがお気に召さないのかを聞きたいのですが。
どこって聞いてると眠くなるところ。電気使えとは言わねえけど、もっとわざとらしいほど盛り上げてくれないと。あと何でもかんでも受け入れるような芸風もつまらない。もう少し反社会的なシャウトを聞かせてほしい。こう感極まって鍵盤を蹴りつけるぐらいに。
And it'd be perfect if you add some heavy distortion.
それは私ではなく曲が悪いということでは。加えて聴いている人間の感性も悪いかと。
何？マナー悪いのかこの観客。
言語に接するほどに私の語彙では言い表せるものがありません。
I turn away and try not to laugh. I thought this was a hard woman to understand, but I see. She acts like this when you poke at something she's proud of.
何か？
いや、込み上げてきたものを我慢しただけ。あんた割と気感棒だよな。音楽の先生もしつけるのにさぞ苦労したろう。
あなたの基準で私を決めつけないでください。それとあなたには私の生い立ちを語ったはずです。私は孤立しているのですから、音楽は独学だと思わないのですか？
いるだろう、
音楽の先生ぐらい。あんたの音には正しい規律がある。何人もの手を渡って受け継がれてきた演奏者の意志みたいなものだ。あんたのオルガンは自分のためのものじゃないだろう。あんたの演奏は多くの人間のために編み込まれた普遍的な音楽だ。
Only technique can be refined through self-study. A genius can't construct a concept that transcends time. If those who shine through their talent are the flowers of the tree, then those who shine through their heritage become the trunk and nurture the tree.
ま、そんな小難しい話以前に、上達したいなら人に教えてもらうのが一番手っ取り早い。世間体より合理性の方を優先したんだろうさ。機関棒ってのはそういうこと。あんたは本当に好きなもののためなら最善を尽くすタイプだと思うんだが。
あなたの推測にはうなずけませんが、音楽を学ぶために特例として時間と指導者を用意していただきました。何かと問題はありましたが。
ほら、怒られてもめげないっていうか、あんまりダメージいかないっていうか、あんたは根っこのところに他人じゃ動かせないものがあるんだよ。自分がないなんてよく言ったもんだ。ほんと、教会の神父ってのはどいつもこいつも高顔にできているんだな。
Wicked laughter. Huh, what's putting me in such a good mood? I don't know if it's because of the entertainment or if it's because I'm feeling a bit careless, but I'm getting a bit high. On the other hand, she became stiff and stood still. It seems that something had struck home for her too.
そんなに高顔でしょうか、私。
ああ、ここの前任者といい勝負。
She looks a bit stiff as she searches for words. I observed this rare moment of clumsiness. Perhaps I'm in an uplifting mood because my senses have relaxed. The desires I pretended to not see until now begin to pulse in unison with my heartbeat. There's a subtle sound like the tearing of thin vinyl. The scent of blood spills out from the bottom of her vestments.
どうした？生理か？
傷が開いただけです。申し訳ありませんが、
そうだな。一つ後ろにずれるわ。悪い。今のは全面的にこっちのミスだ。
There we go. I moved to the seat behind me. Now that I'm a bit farther away, the scent of blood is fainter.
けどあんたも大変だね。傷が開いたって、まだ夜の街を徘徊してるんだ。そうか。4日目の夜には律儀に俺を探してるんだっけ。
It's even funny because you can hear in his voice he sounds less and less like Shiro too.
そうです。聖杯戦争の再現が終わるまで4日目の夜は街に出なくてはいけません。もっとも疲れているのはそれだけではありませんが、最近悪魔払いの真似事も始めましたので。
へえ。
I wasn't actually paying attention. To be honest, just because the smell of blood is fainter now doesn't mean that I'm completely in control. For instance, my eyes are fixated on the wounds hidden by those white bandages, and by those slender arms and shoulders that seem as if they break just by being held down, or even by her white belly, wet with blood, that surely is fresh and in season like those sweet fish skewers.
本職の調子はいいのか？
いいえ、これが全く。今まで多くの悪魔払いをこなしてきたけど、弱音を言ってしまえば今回のようなケースは初めてです。
そいつ手強いんだ。
Red blotches surfaced on her bandages. Luscious, raw. I thought that she was like a doll, but she was plenty fresh and rare.
強いか弱いかで言えば低級の部類に入るでしょう。